Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time once again for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. I'm not gonna lie, I have been waiting with a little bit of anticipation for this film. I still haven't really watched a lot of the anime. I've seen some of it, a couple of episodes, so I have a general idea what the plot is, and I've also seen some of the original Japanese drama. I do want to watch more, I just haven't really found the time to really sit down and do it. Like, this is something that really deserves my attention. But I do understand why it has a huge following. So when this movie was announced, I was kind of excited to see what they do with it. Death Note is the story of this kid named Light who comes across this notebook called the Death Note, which allows its keeper to kill any human being on the planet when they write their name in it. Okay, that right there has so much that you could do with. He soon becomes obsessed with what this book can do. He tries to become a hero by killing all the criminals of the world. And before long, the police and this notable detective who goes by L are hot on his trail to find out who in the world this unseen force is that's causing all the killings around the world. Starting with the actors of this film, I actually thought that they were okay. They don't super stand out, but they're also not like horrible performances either. I know that Light is just kind of portrayed as this really angsty kid and he's only really book smart rather than overall intelligent like the anime, and he's kind of dumb and tells his crush about the Death Note just to impress her. It's like, what the hell, man? Because in the original, he's this really intelligent kid who keeps the Death Note a secret for good reason. But in this version, we're going for the typical kid with the high school crush, and oh wow, I've never seen that before. But to the movie's credit, they do give him a really logical and legit reason for wanting to get rid of all the bad guys in the world. And that's because his own mother was killed by a criminal a long time ago. Yeah, I know that's different from the source material, but for a direct-to-Netflix movie, I actually do think that that's a pretty believable motivation for him wanting to take advantage of what the Death Note can do. The girlfriend character, she's probably the biggest change in this whole thing. And she is just kind of this really typical angsty student type, and you could make the argument that she's just like Kristen Stewart and is just there to look up to the main character because, you know, the script says so. But I'm gonna be real honest with you guys, I like that she actually does something in this movie. She also does become really obsessed with this Death Note, and she goes to really extreme measures to try to take control of it. She doesn't just sit there in the background and just give the motivational lines. No, she actually she creates conflict. It's not maybe the best conflict, but it's still conflict. And I don't know if there's a lot of mixed feelings out there about Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, but I think this was really good casting. He's basically the Green Goblin from Spider-Man, but that also works because Ryuk is a demon and he can be over the top. That voice, it just goes so well with all the other Ryuk voices that I've heard.
Oh, yes. A dream. I like that. Dreams are places you can have fun, right?
And believe me, the graphics of this character could have been absolutely terrible, but again, I was actually pleasantly surprised with the way that they animated him. And his design wasn't too bad either. I like that in some shots in the movie, all you can see is just his shining eyes in the background, and that's actually really creepy. It's kind of like a cat coming at ya. Wow. For lack of a better word, I really did enjoy Ryuk's presence in this film. I mean, it was way better than the Japanese dramas, that's all I'm gonna say about that. The only thing that really sucks about Ryuk in this movie is that he's not in it that much. Okay, maybe not too little, but still, they should have used this character a lot more. Like, we should have seen more of his relationship with Light and have them interact even more, rather than just Ryuk giving instructions and telling him the rules. Like, actually play with their chemistry. The original story does take place in Japan, and this one takes place in Seattle, and I'm just saying, as someone who grew up in Seattle, that's pretty cool. For the most part, the weather in this movie is really overcasty and rainy, which adds to the gloomy tone they were going for in this movie. But right away, I was actually pretty hooked on this film just by the cinematography alone. For a movie that tone-wise is pretty gray and dark, they actually do have some moments where they play with some bright colors, and it does surprisingly still fit. There are a lot of really good shots in this movie, especially at the Ferris wheel climax scene. Holy hell was that shot well. This movie is an adaptation, and yes, of course, people are gonna get a little mad that certain things are messed with, but I do think it's important to remember that certain things are necessary to be changed in order for it to fit into film, or really whatever medium it is that you're translating it to. As long as the changes make sense, I'm usually pretty forgiving. Does it work in this film? Yes and no. In one part of this movie, Light has to make this really, really big decision, and from what I understand, he actually does the exact opposite of what he did in the anime, so I can understand why some people would probably get mad at that. And without even watching a lot of the anime, you do kind of get the feeling that there is a lot crammed in here, and there's also a lot of nods to the manga, and they're only really in here because, you know, they were just a part of the source material. Like, we see L frequently eating candy in this movie, and to my knowledge, they explain that in the anime because they had the time to. He eats candy to concentrate and to keep him awake. But here, they just have it because quirk. So if you don't know the anime, then you'll probably just be like, okay. You also get the feeling that L and Light probably had a bigger relationship in the original, like they actually had a bit more of a rivalry before they found each other. Also, there's a lot of montages in this movie, and I think that if they had added just another half hour and made it like close to 2 hours or something like that, it probably would have been a lot easier to actually put in all these different plot points, and you could have gone into them further and actually had bigger character depth and more reason to the chaos that happens. What is great about an episodic series is that it does give you time to fledge things out more, and you can actually go into further details, and it gives you time to absorb all of that. And to be fair, they didn't try to cram in the entire manga series into a 90-minute movie like The Last Airbender did. And I do think that this movie did a decent job of focusing on the themes about how people do not have the right to say who should die and who shouldn't, and also the whole idea about how, you know what, when you play God, things don't really turn out well for you. To my understanding, it's not the same direction as the original, but I do think that those ideas, as well as the consequences of the characters after getting themselves into this mess, those kinds of things were handled fine. Not great, but fine. The payoff wasn't super strong, and the metaphors were kind of unnecessarily spelled out for us there at the end, but they do leave a pretty nice opportunity for a sequel if they ever want to explore these ideas even more. Is it a great or perfect adaptation? No, not at all. Could they have done more if they added more time, or maybe even turned this into a 13-episode series? Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think a movie of this idea should have been way darker, but for a Netflix film, and as someone who hasn't seen much of the anime, I think it was a serviceable watch. If you go into this without any idea about Death Note, then you'll probably like it okay. And for what it is, I do think it was a pretty decently faithful adaptation with an interesting take on the source material. And apparently the creators of Death Note really did like this movie and thought it was a good representation, so I don't know, maybe that's all that matters. Then again, E.L. James was pretty happy with how 50 Shades Darker came out, so maybe that's not saying a whole lot. Still, it's just one more interpretation. It's not a game changer, but it's also not a huge waste of time. And again, I'll be honest, if they do decide to make a sequel, I'll be kind of interested to see what else they do with it. But I am gonna go watch the anime now, because if that's better than this movie, then it's obviously worth the watch, so yeah, I'm gonna go get on that. So those are my thoughts on the new Death Note film. Now, I wanna know, have you guys had a chance to check it out? And if so, what did you think? Are you a Death Note fan? Are you not? Did you notice more nitpicks? Did you think that there was some interesting changes? Do you have any more ideas on how they could have made this film even better? What are your thoughts? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I make new videos every week. Bye, Adorkable buddies. I'll see you soon.